imagine waking up tomorrow, right? And discovering that a silent, invisible fire has just been burning inside your blood vessels for the last decade.
Yeah, that is, it's a terrifying image.
Yep.
But honestly, biologically, it is incredibly accurate.
Right, because it's a low-grade fire, so, it doesn't send you to the emergency room, but it's slowly damaging your cells, stiffening your arteries, and just draining your daily energy. And the fuel for this fire, it's not like something you're smoking or drinking.
No, absolutely not.
It's the 2 tablespoons of supposedly natural honey you put in your tea every morning, or, the seemingly harmless squirt of ketchup on your eggs.
Exactly. We are talking about chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation.
Hmm.
And the primary catalyst for it in the modern world is our relentless consumption of what is known as free sugar.
Which is everywhere.
It really is everywhere. And the proposition we are looking at today, which is based on some really compelling clinical research into metabolic resets, is a 30-day challenge that completely extinguishes that fire.
And the parameters of this 30-day challenge are what make it so fascinating to me. We are mapping out a profound, transformative biological experiment that you, the listener, can run right inside your own home.
Yeah, it's a very practical protocol.
Right. So picture picking a family member. Let's say it's someone you live with who has the exact same lifestyle as you. You get the same dinners. You have the same basic daily routine. You get roughly the same amount of exercise.
So you're basically living parallel lives.
Exactly. Parallel lives. That person is going to be your control subject for the next 30 days. They keep doing exactly what they always do, but you are going to be the experimental variable.
I love this framing.
Yeah, you are going to completely, 100% cut out all free sugar from your life. The mission of this deep dive is to explore the exact day-by-day, week-by-week physiological and honestly psychological transformations that are going to explode into action inside your body during this challenge.
And we'll compare your new baseline to that family member who is, still riding the standard dietary roller coaster.
Exactly. But to do this properly, we have to be incredibly precise about what free sugar actually means, because this is where the confusion usually starts, right?
Oh, absolutely. The definitions are where everyone gets tripped up. So free sugar refers to any sugar that has been extracted, refined, or broken down from its original natural cellular matrix.
Okay, so sugar that's been physically freed from its origin.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, that includes white granulated table sugar, but it also includes things that masquerade as health foods. We were talking about jaggery or gur, which is deeply embedded in a lot of cultural diet.
Oh, yeah. People love to defend jaggery.
They do. But we were also talking about honey, agave nectar, maple syrup, and also any flavoring agents and the hidden sugars packed into seemingly savory everyday items.
Like commercially baked bread.
Right. Bread, sauces, salad dressings. Basically, if the sugar has been removed from the plant or the source and added to the food, it is a free sugar.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you right there because this is the exact loophole everyone tries to jump through. People think, like, I'm not eating refined white sugar. I'm using organic raw honey from a local farm, so I'm doing great.
Yeah, the naturalistic fallacy.
Exactly. Why is a natural product like honey on the banned list for this experiment?
Well, because your pancreas, which is the organ responsible for managing sugar in your bloodstream, it does not have a moral compass.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. And it does not read food labels. It doesn't look at the sugar entering your blood and say, oh, this molecule came from a lovely, hardworking bee, and this one came from a sterile processing plant. It just doesn't care. It just sees glucose and fructose molecules pouring into the bloodstream. It registers a massive spike in energy that it now has to manage frantically to keep your blood from becoming toxic. The origin story of the sugar is just completely irrelevant to your endocrine system.
Wow. Okay, so if the origin story is irrelevant, then what is actually on the safe list? Because if honey is out, listeners are probably wondering if they are relegated to chewing on ice cubes and lettuce for a month.
No, not at all. The safe list is actually quite robust, but it requires understanding the concept of the food matrix.
The food matrix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whole fruits are completely allowed. Dry fruits, in their whole natural form, are allowed. Plain dairy milk is allowed.
Okay.
But the absolute golden rule here is that no external sugar or syrup can be added, and the structural integrity of the food must remain largely intact.
And this brings up a massive point of confusion. You're saying if I eat a whole apple, it's fine.
Perfectly fine.
But if I take that exact same apple, put it in a blender, and make a 100% natural apple juice or a smoothie, it's suddenly a massive problem.
It is a huge problem.
How does physically mashing up a piece of fruit fundamentally change how my pancreas reacts to it. I mean, it is literally the exact same molecules going into my stomach.
It is the same molecules, yeah, but the delivery mechanism has been completely destroyed. Think about it. When you eat a whole apple, the fructose is locked inside a matrix of insoluble and soluble fiber.
Like the tough cellular walls of the apple.
Exactly. So when that apple hits your stomach and intestines, your digestive enzymes have to work incredibly hard to break down those cell walls. It takes hours.
Right.
So the sugar trickles into your bloodstream slowly, molecule by molecule, like a gentle, steady stream. Your liver and pancreas can easily handle a gentle stream.
But when you blend it,
When you blend or juice that apple, the blades of the blender have done the mechanical digestion for you. They have pulverized the cell walls and stripped the fiber of its structural slowing power.
oh, I see.
So you drink the juice, and instead of a gentle stream, it's a flash flood. The sugar hits your bloodstream almost instantly, spiking your blood glucose to the exact same dangerous heights as a can of soda.
That is wild. It's not about the sugar itself, it's about the velocity of the sugar entering the blood.
Yes, the velocity is everything.
And that velocity, that flash flood, is the baseline problem we are really trying to solve with this 30-day reset. Because the clinical data suggests that this constant high-velocity sugar effectively hijacks the body's entire metabolic system.
And absolutely holds it hostage.
Right, holding the brain, pancreas, and liver hostage. I look at consuming free sugar like living on a metabolic credit card.
Oh, I like that. How do you mean?
Well, think about the transaction, right? When you consume free sugar, you get this massive, immediate burst of cellular energy. You didn't really work for it. You didn't have to digest complex fibers. You just swiped the card and got the cash.
Yeah, cheap energy.
Exactly. But there's a limit to that credit line, and there is an astronomical interest rate. Your pancreas is basically the accountant trying to manage this massive influx of debt.
Frantically trying to manage it.
Yeah, it frantically pumps out the hormone insulin to sweep that toxic excess sugar out of the bloodstream and shove it into your muscle and fat cells. And if you do this once in a while, say a piece of cake at a birthday party, fine, you pay off the balance.
Right? Your body can handle the occasional spike.
But most of us are swiping that metabolic credit card 5, 6, 10 times a day. Coffee with syrup, a sweetened yogurt, a sandwich on highly processed bread, a granola bar. The pancreas is just maxed out, constantly flooding the system with insulin.
And that constant flooding leads directly to the biological equivalent of bankruptcy, which we call insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance. Okay, break that down for us.
We have to look at this at the cellular receptor level to really understand why it's so dangerous. So insulin is like a key that unlocks the door to your cells, allowing glucose to enter.
Okay, the lock and key mechanism.
Yes, but because the cells are being bombarded with these insulin keys so frequently, multiple times a day, year after year, the cells try to protect themselves from being overstuffed with energy.
They just get sick of it.
They do. They literally downregulate their insulin receptors. They hide the keyholes. They pull up the drawbridge and say, no more, we are completely full.
So the lock is broken. Now you have a massive amount of sugar circulating in the blood, which is toxic, right? And a massive amount of insulin circulating in the blood, panicking because the cells won't open their doors.
Precisely. It's a traffic jam.
So where does all that excess sugar go if the muscles won't take it?
Well, it goes straight to the liver. And the liver is forced into a metabolic corner. Since the muscle cells refuse the sugar, the insulin forces the liver to convert that excess glucose and fructose into fat.
Just converting it directly to fat.
Yeah. It deposits this fat inside the liver itself and then exports the rest out into the body. And this is a highly destructive cascade.
It sounds like it.
Frequent sugar intake causes constant insulin release. Constant insulin release leads to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance forces sugar to deposit as visceral fat.
Which is the dangerous kind of fat.
Very dangerous. This drives obesity, which pushes the body toward type 2 diabetes. And ultimately, that chronic high blood sugar and high insulin state degrades the endothelial lining of the blood vessels, leading directly to heart attacks, strokes, and heart failure.
So the hijack is complete. You've basically broken your own metabolic machinery.
You really have.
Which is exactly why this 30-day challenge is so critical. We are cutting up the metabolic credit card. No more swiping, no more free sugar. But we need to walk through the reality of what happens when you do this, starting with day one.
Yes, day one is a shock to the system.
Because I think a lot of people have this naive assumption that the moment you stop eating something toxic, your body immediately thanks you. You throw away the candy bars, and by dinner time, you expect to be skipping through a meadow feeling vibrant and pure.
If only human biology were that forgiving. The reality is that the immediate aftermath of cutting out free sugar is not physical relief. It is profound psychological and neurological withdrawal. The first 24 hours are incredibly turbulent, and the symptoms are aggressive.
The symptom list for day one is honestly no joke. We are talking about intense irritability, flashes of unprovoked anger, pounding headaches, and just an overwhelming, all-consuming craving for sweets. Your brain essentially throws a violent tantrum.
It does.
And I struggle with this concept a bit. Why does a purely physical food substance cause such a severe psychological mood crash?
Because sugar isn't just a physical food substance. It is a highly potent psychoactive compound that interfaces directly with your brain's reward circuitry.
Psychoactive. Wow.
Yes. Specifically, we have to talk about dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is widely misunderstood. People think it's the pleasure chemical, but it's actually the chemical of motivation, craving, and reward prediction.
Okay, so it drives you to seek things out.
Exactly. Evolutionary biology wired us to release a surge of dopamine when we found high-calorie sweet foods. Thousands of years ago, finding a bush of wheat berries meant you weren't going to starve to death that week.
It was a jackpot.
Total jackpot. The dopamine surge reinforced that behavior, telling the brain, hey, remember exactly where that bush is and eat as much as you can right now.
But the environment changed. We don't have to forage for berries anymore. We can get a concentrated hit of that exact same dopamine jackpot at any corner store for $2.
Exactly. The modern brain is entirely accustomed to receiving these massive artificial dopamine spikes from free sugar multiple times a day. But the brain is also an organ of homeostasis, right? It likes balance.
It wants to stay level.
Yeah. So if you constantly flood it with huge spikes of dopamine, it tries to protect itself from the overstimulation.
How does it do that?
It downregulates its own dopamine receptors, particularly the D2 receptors. It physically reduces the number of docking stations available for the dopamine to land on.
Okay, so I think of this like wearing sunglasses inside a building.
Okay, I'm listening.
Like if you constantly stare into blinding artificial lights, which is the sugar, your brain puts on dark sunglasses to protect your eyes. It downregulates the receptors.
That's exactly what it does.
But when you start this challenge on day one, you suddenly turn off the blinding lights. You stop eating the sugar.
Yeah.
The problem is your brain is still wearing the dark sunglasses.
Oh, yeah.
So you were sitting in a normally lit room, but everything looks incredibly bleak, dark, and depressing.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize receptor downregulation. When you stop eating sugar on day one, you aren't returning to a normal baseline. You are dropping into a profound neurochemical deficit.
You are stranded in the low.
Yes, you are stranded. The artificial highs are gone, but your brain hasn't had time to take off the sunglasses yet. That profound dopamine deficit is the biological mechanism behind the intense irritability, the anger, and the headaches.
It's begging for the lights to come back on.
Precisely. Your brain is realizing the cheap thrills are gone, its motivation circuits are starved, and it is protesting aggressively to force you to go find sugar.
And it is so important to understand that this is a purely mechanical reaction. Like, if you are doing this challenge and on the evening of day one, you feel like snapping at your spouse, or you have a headache that feels like a vice grip, you are not actually a miserable person.
No, your identity hasn't changed.
Right. It is just your dopamine receptors downregulating. Recognizing the physical mechanism behind the emotion really helps separate yourself from the craving.
It completely robs the craving of its power. You can observe the anger rather than acting on it. And, as you white-knuckle through that initial neurological friction, we move into days 2 and 3.
This is where the narrative shifts.
It does. It shifts away from the brain and down into the body. This is the period of the great metabolic shift.
Okay, so set the scene for us here. It's day 2. The brain is still wearing the dark sunglasses, begging for a dopamine hit, but now the body's internal environment is changing.
Rapidly changing.
The body realizes that the easy, cheap energy source, those flash floods of glucose, are completely gone. But you still have to function. I mean, your heart still has to beat 100,000 times a day. Your lungs have to expand. You have to go to work.
The energy demands don't stop.
Right. So the body has to bridge the energy gap. It has to pivot to a new fuel source.
And this pivot is just a masterclass in human survival mechanisms. Under standard modern conditions, your body runs primarily on the immediate glucose from the simple carbohydrates you consume.
It's accessible, volatile fuel.
Exactly. But without it, the body is forced to raid its internal emergency pantry. And there is a very specific, strict biological hierarchy to how it burns this internal fuel, beginning with phase 1.
Let's break down that hierarchy, because understanding this roadmap is just so crucial for anyone going through the challenge. What exactly is happening under the skin in phase 1?
So phase 1 begins the moment your immediate blood glucose levels begin to drop. The pancreas senses this drop and stops producing insulin. Instead, it releases a different hormone called glucagon.
Glucagon? Okay, so that's like the opposite of insulin.
It is the biological opposite. While insulin stores energy, glucagon demands its release. Glucagon travels straight to the liver and the muscles, where the body stores an emergency backup supply of glucose called glycogen.
Wait, how does the body actually store sugar? Because we usually think of sugar as like granules or a liquid syrup.
Right. It doesn't look like table sugar inside you. Glycogen is essentially hundreds of glucose molecules linked together in a highly branched complex chain.
So it's packed together.
Yes, it's a way to tightly pack sugar into a solid, storage-friendly form. When glucagon hits the liver, it triggers enzymes that literally start snipping individual glucose molecules off the ends of these glycogen branches.
Just snipping them off and dumping them into the blood.
Exactly, dumping them into the bloodstream to keep your brain and organs running smoothly.
But that emergency stash isn't infinite, right? How long can the liver keep snipping off those glucose molecules before the pantry is totally bare?
Not long at all. The human liver can only hold roughly 100 to 120 grams of glycogen. The muscles hold more, but muscle glycogen is selfish.
Selfish? How so?
It can only be used by the specific muscle it's stored in. It cannot be released back into the bloodstream for the brain to use.
Oh, wow. So your brain can't access the muscle stash.
No. So for keeping the whole system alive, we are relying entirely on that finite liver supply. And within about 24 to 48 hours of eating zero free sugar, which puts us right in the thick of days 2 and 3, that liver glycogen is entirely depleted.
And I have to challenge something here, because this is usually the exact moment, day 3, where people step on the scale, see they've lost 4 pounds, and throw celebrations thinking they just burned 4 pounds of body fat.
Ah, yes, the day 3 celebration.
Right, but that's a total illusion, isn't it? Why are we cheering for this immediate weight drop if it isn't actually fat?
It is entirely an illusion. To understand why, you have to look at the molecular structure of glycogen. For every 1 gram of glycogen stored in your liver and muscles, the body must store approximately 3 to 4 grams of water to hydrate it and maintain its structure.
So it's like a sponge.
It is exactly like a sponge. As your liver aggressively burns through that glycogen on days 2 and 3, it wrings out the sponge. You flush out all that bound water through your kidneys.
So the sudden drop on the scale is purely water weight, leaving the body as the emergency fuel is burned.
Yes, you haven't touched the fat yet.
So do not get cocky on day 3. You haven't melted the fat yet. But flushing out that water and depleting that glycogen is a necessary prerequisite, right? Because once the glycogen is gone, the body hits a critical survival juncture.
The easy fuel is gone. The emergency backup is gone.
And this forces us into phase 3.
Yes. Phase 3 is the magic moment of this entire experiment. The body is out of glucose, but energy demands remain high. It must now break down stored body fat for energy.
And what's that process called?
This cellular process is called lipolysis. Because the massive spikes of insulin have finally vanished, the hormonal environment in the body completely shifts.
Right, because insulin was the guard at the door.
Exactly. Low insulin is the signal that permits fat cells to finally unlock their doors, break down triglycerides, and release free fatty acids into the bloodstream to be burned for fuel.
But I want to talk about the friction of this shift. Like, if I'm doing this challenge on day 3, how am I actually feeling as my body flips this massive metabolic switch from burning sugar to burning fat? Because it is rarely a smooth transition.
Oh, it is not smooth at all. This is often referred to as metabolic inflexibility.
Metabolic inflexibility.
Yes. Your cellular machinery has been running exclusively on glucose for years. The enzymes required to efficiently burn fat have essentially been dormant.
They're rusty.
They are very rusty. When the body is suddenly forced to switch to fat, it takes a few days to ramp up the production of these specific fat-burning enzymes.
And during that gap.
During this gap, your brain, which normally demands massive amounts of glucose, struggles to adapt to using alternative fuels, like ketones derived from the newly released fat.
So you feel like garbage.
Precisely. You feel profoundly sluggish. Your limbs might feel heavy, like you're moving through water. You experience severe brain fog, difficulty concentrating, and just a general heavy fatigue.
But the reframe here is crucial. When you are lying on the couch on day 3 feeling like your brain is made of lead, you have to understand that this specific physical misery is the exact moment your glucose dependency is snapping.
Yes. It is the friction of the gears grinding back into place.
It's the dormant, rusty, fat-burning machinery forcing itself back online, which leads us to the breakthrough. Because by day 4, through the end of week 1, the friction stops. We enter the phase of finding equilibrium.
By surviving the turbulent metabolic shift of those first 3 days, the body adapts. The enzymes are produced, the alternative fuel pathways are open, and the body reaches a new, highly stable plateau.
The roller coaster stops.
The chaotic roller coaster of the previous decade has completely stopped. By day 4, your blood sugar line becomes entirely static.
A static blood sugar line. We are so used to the spikes and crashes, right? Like, we eat the pastry, the blood sugar skyrockets, we feel manic energy, the insulin floods in, the sugar crashes, we feel angry and exhausted.
And then we eat a candy bar to fix it, and the cycle just repeats.
Exactly. But a flat, static blood sugar line means absolute physiological peace. The cravings just evaporate because your cells aren't panicking for a quick fix anymore. The mood completely stabilizes. That initial day 1 anger is just a distant memory.
And this isn't just about feeling emotionally stable. Underneath the surface, there are 3 massive, profound physiological mechanisms shifting into gear by the end of week 1.
Let's get into those. What's the first one?
First, we have the cessation of insulin spikes. We touched on this with the lock and key analogy, but the tangible benefit of silencing these spikes is a complete halt to disease progression.
A complete halt. That's a huge statement.
It is, but it's true. Insulin is primarily a storage hormone. Its job is to pack energy away as fat and aggressively lock the doors so that fat cannot be burned.
So by flatlining the insulin.
By flatlining the insulin levels, the body fundamentally changes its operational mode. It stops actively creating new fat, and more importantly, it stops worsening the toxic accumulation of fat inside your vital organs. The active damage is halted in its tracks.
So the environment turns from one of disease progression into one of maintenance and healing. Okay, that's huge. And the second major internal shift by the end of week 1.
Inflammation.
Drops. Inflammation, this is a massive buzzword right now. We hear inflammation and we think of like a swollen ankle or a bee sting. But systemic inflammation is completely different. Earlier, I compared it to a silent fire in your blood vessels. What is the actual mechanism of that fire? How does sugar literally burn you from the inside?
It comes down to a process called oxidative stress and glycation. When you have chronically high blood sugar from eating free sugar, those excess glucose molecules in your bloodstream are highly reactive.
They're bouncing around.
Yeah, they literally crash into the proteins and lipids that make up your blood vessels and tissues, and they bond to them. This creates rogue molecules known as advanced glycation end products.
Which is fittingly abbreviated as AGs.
Yes, AGs.
So the sugar is literally sticking to your tissue and damaging its structural integrity.
Yes. And your immune system is highly intelligent. It detects these AGEs, recognizes them as damaged, foreign tissue, and mounts an immune response to try and clear them out.
So it sends in the troops.
It sends inflammatory cytokines to the site. The problem is, because you are eating sugar all day, the damage is constant. The immune system is constantly deployed.
It's like having a tiny low-grade immune war raging inside your blood vessels, your joints, and your organs 24 hours a day.
That's exactly what it is.
And what does that internal war feel like to the person living with it? Because you don't feel a literal burning sensation in your veins.
No, it feels like chronic, mysterious, heavy fatigue. It feels like waking up after 8 solid hours of sleep and still feeling like you've been run over by a truck.
Oh man, I think a lot of listeners know that exact feeling.
Yeah. It feels like your joints are slightly stiff and achy for no apparent reason. It feels like you lack vitality. But as that static blood sugar level is achieved by day 4, the creation of those new AGEs stops.
The fuel for the fire is removed.
The immune system finally stands down, and the systemic inflammation rapidly cools.
And the result of that fire going out is that this heavy blanket of fatigue, something you might have just accepted as, oh, I'm getting older, or I have a stressful job, it completely vanishes.
You realize it wasn't age at all. It was the inflammation from the sugar.
Which ties perfectly into the third major mechanism of week 1.
Okay.
Cognitive clarity.
Yes. The brain fog, the lack of focus, and the desperate hunger pangs are completely eliminated.
And I love how the clinical data groups brain fog and desperate hunger together because they're deeply linked biologically, right?
Intimately linked.
Because when your blood sugar crashes, your brain, which uses, what, 20% of your body's total energy?
About 20%, yes.
Right, so it panics. It senses an energy crisis. It fires off emergency adrenaline signals that you interpret as anxiety and inability to focus and ravenous hunger.
It's a panic response.
But when the blood sugar is static, the brain has a constant, smooth, uninterrupted supply of energy, both from stable glucose and from ketones. So you suddenly find that you can sit at your desk at 2 p.m. and just focus.
You don't hit the 2 p.m. wall.
Exactly. You don't need a third cup of coffee. You don't need a granola bar. You aren't staring blankly at your inbox. You feel this sustained surge of natural, endogenous energy.
It is vital to emphasize that by the end of week 1, you will tangibly feel this. The difference between the chaotic desperation of day 1 and the smooth, stable clarity of day 7 is staggering.
The body has adapted.
It has. And because the fire is out and the energy is stable, the body uses week 2 to begin the much deeper, complex repair work.
This is where we get into the hormonal reset and a concept that I find absolutely brilliant: hunger hygiene.
Hunger hygiene, yes.
It implies that a standard modern diet makes our hunger incredibly dirty, messy, and disorganized.
It is a brilliant term because it perfectly encapsulates the chaos of a sugar-dependent metabolism. Now that the blood sugar is stable, the body uses week 2 to start repairing its internal communication systems.
Clearing the static.
The static on the cellular radio dial clears up, and the body can finally hear its own signals again. Specifically, the endocrine signals that dictate your entire relationship with food.
We're talking about the hunger hormones, and I want to spend significant time on this because once you understand these hormones, you realize why relying on willpower to lose weight is a total biological myth.
Willpower absolutely fails in the face of hormonal dysregulation.
Right, so let's look at the mechanics of the two major players here, ghrelin and leptin.
Let's define the players. Ghrelin is the hormone that initiates hunger. I always remember it because it sounds like a gremlin waking up in your stomach demanding to be fed.
I love that, the hunger gremlin.
When your stomach is physically empty, it secretes ghrelin, which travels through the blood to your brain, specifically the hypothalamus, and says, hey, we need energy. Start eating now.
Okay, so ghrelin tells you to eat. What about leptin?
Leptin, on the other hand, is the satiety hormone. It is primarily produced by your fat cells. As you eat and your fat cells fill up with energy, they release leptin. The leptin travels to the brain and says, we've stored enough energy, shut down the hunger signals, put the fork down, and increase physical activity.
So in a healthy, metabolically flexible person, it is a perfect seesaw. Stomach is empty, ghrelin goes up, you eat. Fat cells fill up, leptin goes up, you stop eating.
It requires zero willpower. It's just a mechanical feedback loop.
But constant glucose fluctuations from free sugar completely scramble this communication. How exactly does sugar break the leptin signal?
This is where it gets highly insidious. When you consume high amounts of free sugar, your liver produces high levels of triglycerides, which are fats circulating in the blood. Research shows that these high triglycerides literally block leptin from crossing the blood-brain barrier.
Wait, they physically block it?
They physically block it. So your fat cells are completely full. They are screaming, releasing massive amounts of leptin saying, we are full, stop eating.
But the brain can't hear them.
Because of the sugar-induced triglycerides, that leptin signal physically cannot reach the hypothalamus. The brain has its fingers in its ears.
That is absolutely tragic. The brain is blind to the body's energy stores. So if the brain can't hear the leptin, what does it think is happening?
The brain assumes you are starving to death.
Wow.
Because it registers zero leptin, it keeps ghrelin levels incredibly high. This is why you can be objectively overweight, holding hundreds of thousands of calories of stored fat, and yet feel fiercely biochemically starving all the time.
You are hormonally starving while physically fed.
Exactly.
But in week 2 of this challenge, the magic happens. You've cut the sugar, the insulin has dropped, the triglycerides have plummeted, the blood-brain barrier is clear, and the brain can suddenly hear the leptin again.
The hormones reset. The radiostatic is gone. And the physical experience of this for the listener is profound.
What does that feel like?
You will naturally experience eating less, feeling full much faster, and staying full for much longer. You are not forcing yourself to eat smaller portions through gritted teeth and willpower.
Your body is genuinely, organically satisfied.
Yes. Your hunger hygiene is fully restored. You eat a meal, and the frantic, obsessive need to graze on snacks 2 hours later disappears entirely.
That hormonal piece alone is incredible. But there is a second massive mechanism shifting in week 2, which is the return of insulin sensitivity.
Another huge shift.
We talked about insulin resistance earlier, right? The cells hiding their keyholes because they were bombarded with too much sugar. How does week 2 fix the locks?
Because the body is no longer being bombarded with massive amounts of free sugar, the pancreas finally gets a vacation. Insulin levels drop to a low, healthy baseline.
It stops panicking.
Right. And in response to this calm environment, the muscle and liver cells begin to upregulate their insulin receptors again. They bring the keyholes back to the surface. They become highly sensitive to insulin again.
Let's refine that lock and key analogy. With insulin resistance, the lock was entirely rusted shut from overuse. The pancreas was just frantically shoving more and more insulin keys into the lock, trying to force it open just to get a tiny bit of sugar out of the blood.
Just jamming the keys in.
But by week 2 of zero free sugar, it's like you've sprayed WD-40 deep into the cellular mechanism, you've cleared out the rust, suddenly the receptors turn smoothly, you only need one single insulin key, and the cellular door clicks open effortlessly.
Exactly. And when that door clicks open effortlessly and your baseline insulin remains low, we unlock the next major biological achievement: massive fat mobilization.
Fat mobilization.
Remember, insulin is the gatekeeper of your fat cells. High insulin lunks the fat inside. With insulin sensitivity fully restored and overall insulin levels dropping, the gates swing open.
It's finally allowed to leave.
Yes. Fat, especially the dangerous toxic fat trapped in and around your internal organs, begins to actively break down into the bloodstream as free fatty acids and get burned by your muscles for energy.
The body is finally burning its own storage. And externally, the listener is going to feel this shift in a very specific, undeniable way. You aren't just going to feel normal. You are going to feel an immense surge in physical stamina.
A huge surge.
There will be a drastic reduction in lethargy. You'll likely find you require slightly less sleep because your sleep architecture and quality are so much better without the blood sugar crashes waking you up.
You sleep much deeper.
And you will feel this spontaneous, almost weird urge to be physically active. You might find yourself thinking like, I think I'll take the stairs today. Or I actually want to go for a brisk walk after dinner.
And you won't be doing it out of obligation or guilt.
No. You will do it because your body literally has an abundance of newly unlocked energy that it desperately wants to use.
It is the difference between dragging a heavy anchor behind you all day and finally cutting the rope. The energy is liberating. And, as we transition from the hormonal shifts of week 2 into the deeper systemic changes of week 3, we move from the blood into the actual ecosystem of the stomach.
Week 3 brings the complete gut microbiome makeover and the melting of visceral fat.
This is a massive transition.
The gut microbiome is such a wild, fascinating frontier of modern biology. It's this massive ecosystem of trillions of organisms living inside us, dictating our health. And while we've been so focused on the liver and the brain, this ecosystem has been quietly undergoing a massive revolution during this challenge.
It really has.
Because eating a high-sugar diet is essentially carpet bombing your own gut, isn't it?
It is exactly like a bacterial battlefield. The human gut contains trillions of microbes, both beneficial and harmful, constantly competing for resources and territory.
A constant war.
They exist in a very delicate balance. The beneficial bacteria, our allies, thrive on complex carbohydrates, insoluble fibers, and polyphenols. They break down these fibers and produce incredibly healing byproducts called short-chain fatty acids.
Specifically one called butyrate.
Specifically butyrate, yes.
Let's get specific about butyrate, because I hear short-chain fatty acids and it sounds very, clinical. What does butyrate actually do for us?
Butyrate is a superfuel for the cells lining your colon. It keeps the intestinal wall strong and prevents leaky gut. But more incredibly, it crosses the intestinal barrier, enters the bloodstream, and powerfully reduces systemic inflammation. It also plays a direct role in the gut-brain axis.
Yes, the gut-brain axis. I always hear a happy gut makes a happy brain, which sounds great on a bumper sticker, but how does a microscopic bacterium in my large intestine actually influence my mood? How does it reach my brain?
Through multiple pathways, actually, but primarily via the vagus nerve, which is a massive neural highway connecting the gut directly to the brain.
Okay, the vagus nerve.
Furthermore, beneficial gut bacteria stimulate specialized cells in the gut lining, called enterochromaffin cells, to synthesize massive amounts of serotonin.
Serotonin, the happiness chemical.
Yes. In fact, over 90% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter responsible for feelings of well-being and happiness, is produced in the gut. not the brain.
90%.
Yeah.
So if you have a healthy gut, you literally have the chemical building blocks for happiness.
Exactly. But when you consume high amounts of free sugar, you disrupt this entire serotonin factory.
You just shut it
You
down.
destroy it.
Right.
Free sugar is rapidly fermented by certain harmful strains of bacteria and opportunistic yeasts, like Candida.
Right.
When you eat sugar, you are effectively feeding the enemy army while starving your beneficial allies of the fiber they need.
Huh.
The harmful bacteria multiply rapidly, overpowering the good bacteria, creating a toxic state called dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is not a silent condition.
Yeah.
Listeners deal with the symptoms of this every single day. What does a dysbiotic, sugar-fed gut actually feel like?
It manifests as daily, chronic gastrointestinal misery, severe bloating, chronic indigestion, acid reflux, excessive gas.
Just a constant heavy feeling of abdominal discomfort.
Yeah. The bad bacteria rapidly ferment the sugar, producing excess gas that stretches the intestines. And they secrete toxins that irritate and inflame the delicate mucosal lining of the stomach.
But in week 3 of the Zero Sugar Challenge, the tide of the battle definitively turns. The reinforcements have arrived.
They absolutely have.
Because you have completely starved the bad bacteria and the yeast of their favorite rapid fermenting fuel for 2 solid weeks, they begin to die off in massive numbers.
The die-off is real.
And the week 3 microbiome reset means the good bacteria can finally reclaim their territory, multiply, and restore the gut's delicate balance. The physical symptom relief is staggering.
It's like night and day.
The everyday miseries, the painful bloating, the feeling that you look 6 months pregnant after eating a simple sandwich, the acid reflux that keeps you propped up on pillows at night, it all completely vanishes. Your stomach feels functionally flat, calm, and highly efficient.
It is a profound restoration of gastrointestinal peace. And, speaking of the physical sensation of a flat stomach, week 3 is when we start to see the visible physical manifestation of the fat loss that initiated in week 2.
Building on that restored insulin sensitivity.
Yes. Week 3 is when you will start physically noticing that your body composition is changing.
But we have to be extremely specific about what kind of fat is leaving the building. The clinical data points out that belly fat, specifically visceral fat, starts shrinking first. And I want to challenge you to explain the difference between visceral fat and subcutaneous fat, because they are absolutely not the same thing, and how they behave is completely different.
Oh, they're biologically distinct tissues. Subcutaneous fat is the fat stored just beneath your skin. It's the fat you can pinch on your arms, your thighs, or your lower back.
The jiggly fat.
Right. And while it might be cosmetically frustrating for some people, metabolically speaking, subcutaneous fat is relatively benign. It's mostly just inert storage.
Okay, so what is visceral fat?
Visceral fat, on the other hand, is the fat stored deep inside your abdominal cavity. It aggressively wraps around your vital organs, your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, your heart.
It's the fat that gives someone a hard, protruding beer belly.
Right. Yeah.
It's tight, not jiggly.
Exactly. But the danger isn't mechanical, it's chemical. Visceral fat is highly metabolically active. It does not just sit there. It acts as an aggressive endocrine organ.
Wait, fat acts like a gland? I thought fat was just storage, like biological Tupperware.
No, it is entirely an active gland. Visceral fat actively secretes dangerous inflammatory cytokines, specifically molecules like TNF-alpha and interleukin-6.
So it's pumping out poison.
It is. These cytokines pour directly into the liver and systemic circulation, actively driving up inflammation, worsening insulin resistance, and increasing cardiovascular risk. Visceral fat is the most toxic, dangerous fat in the human body.
But here is the silver lining. Because visceral fat is so deeply linked to high insulin and sugar consumption, it is also highly responsive.
Very responsive.
When you cut the sugar and your insulin drops to a baseline level, the visceral fat is the first fat to receive the signal to dissolve. It begins to break down from the inside out.
Which is why relying on a standard bathroom scale during week 3 can be incredibly deceptive and frustrating.
Listeners desperately need to hear this. In week 3, you might step on the scale expecting to be down 10 pounds, and the piece of metal on the floor says you've only lost a pound or 2, and you might feel like quitting.
You really might.
But you have to pay attention to your body. Your pants button easier, your belt needs a new notch, you physically feel lighter, and your stomach feels less rigid. That is because the toxic visceral fat is breaking down from the inside out.
You are literally unsuffocating your vital organs.
Yes, you are unsuffocating your organs before the superficial, jiggly fat under the skin completely melts away. The scale is a terrible metric for this specific type of metabolic healing.
It is a critical distinction. Do not let the gravitational pull of a piece of metal dictate the success of a profound metabolic overhaul.
Right.
The internal microscopic measurements are what truly matter. And that brings us perfectly into week 4, where those internal changes transition from things you vaguely feel into undeniable clinical facts.
Week 4. The clinical transformations. We have made it to the 1-month mark of the experiment. The dopamine cravings are completely gone. The energy is high and stable. The gut microbiome is balanced. The toxic visceral fat is shrinking.
It's a completely new baseline.
But now, the changes are objective data points that a doctor could read on a lab chart. Let's do a deep dive into the measurable medical transformations that occur by day 30, because it is staggering. First up on the lab report, blood pressure drops significantly. Why? What does cutting sugar have to do with the pressure in my arteries?
It comes back to insulin and the kidneys.
Okay, how so?
When insulin levels are chronically high due to daily free sugar intake, that insulin signals your kidneys to desperately hold on to sodium.
It stops releasing salt.
Right. And where sodium goes, water immediately follows via osmosis. This excess water drastically increases your total blood volume. It's like turning up the faucet on a garden hose without widening the hose.
The pressure against the artery walls skyrockets, high blood pressure.
Exactly. Furthermore, the drop in systemic inflammation we discussed earlier means the endothelial lining, the delicate inner wall of your blood vessels, can finally produce nitric oxide properly.
Which does what?
Nitric oxide allows the vessels to relax and dilate. So between the kidneys releasing the excess sodium and water and the blood vessels naturally relaxing, blood pressure naturally plummets into a healthier range.
It's just basic plumbing mechanics fixing themselves. That is incredible.
It really is.
Okay, next on the chart. The reversal of a fatty liver. The clinical research states that an ultrasound at the 30-day mark would physically show this.
Yes. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a modern epidemic, and it is directly tied to free sugar, particularly the fructose component of sugar.
Right, because we talked about the liver taking all that excess.
Exactly. Remember, the liver is forced to turn excess sugar into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis, literally meaning making new fat from nothing.
And it just stores it locally.
Over years, the liver becomes dangerously engorged with this newly created fat. By removing the free sugar and lowering insulin, we force the liver to stop de novo lipogenesis and begin burning its own stored fat for localized energy.
Oh.
Within just 30 days, a hepatic ultrasound would show a visible, measurable reduction in liver fat volume.
That fast.
That fast. Alongside this, elevated liver enzymes like ALT and AST, which leak into the blood when liver cells are actively dying or inflamed, will return to normal, healthy ranges. The liver is actively regenerating.
You are reversing severe organ damage in a single month. Just let the magnitude of that settle in.
Okay, next on the lab report, lipid profiles improve. Specifically, there is a massive drop in triglyceride levels. But I have to ask, why triglycerides and not necessarily a massive drop in LDL cholesterol? Because triglycerides are the actual storage form of fat circulating in the blood, and there is a massive dietary misconception here.
Which is?
The common myth is that eating dietary fat raises your blood triglycerides. It largely does not.
Wait, really?
Really? Eating excess carbohydrates and free sugar raises them. When the liver performs that de novo lipogenesis we just talked about, it packages that newly created fat into triglycerides to be shipped out into the bloodstream.
Oh, I see.
When you cut the sugar, you completely shut down the production line. Triglyceride levels plummet rapidly within weeks, which cardiologists increasingly recognize as one of the most vital indicators of reduced cardiovascular and metabolic risk.
And finally, the ultimate clinical victory. The data specifically addresses pre-diabetic and diabetic listeners. It notes that by week 4, fasting blood sugar values in the morning will normalize.
Yes, fasting glucose drops.
But there is a very specific caveat here. If this zero sugar lifestyle is maintained for 2 to 3 months, the HbA1c levels will also normalize. Let's do a deep dive into HbA1c because I think millions of people hear their doctor say those letters, but they have absolutely no idea what it actually measures or why it takes a full 3 months to change.
It is arguably the most vital metabolic metric in modern medicine. HbA1c stands for glycated hemoglobin.
Okay, hemoglobin.
Hemoglobin is the protein inside your red blood cells that carries oxygen to your tissues. When you have chronically high sugar circulating in your blood, those sticky glucose molecules physically crash into the hemoglobin proteins and bond to them.
This is the glycation process we mentioned earlier.
Yes, it essentially coats the red blood cell in sugar.
We used the candied apple metaphor earlier, but let's get away from that because it sounds almost pleasant.
Yeah.
What does this glycation actually do to the red blood cell? Does it make it stiff? Does it ruin it?
It absolutely ruins it. The sugar coating cross-links the proteins, making the red blood cell membrane stiff, rigid, and deformed.
It's supposed to be flexible, right?
Yes, instead of being a flexible disc that can smoothly bend and fold to squeeze through your microscopic capillaries, like the tiny vessels in your eyes, your kidneys, and your toes, these stiff, glycated red blood cells get stuck.
They just cause a traffic jam.
They cause microvascular blockages and damage, which is exactly why uncontrolled diabetes leads to blindness, kidney failure, and amputations.
Because the blood literally can't reach those tissues.
Exactly. The HbA1c test measures the exact percentage of your red blood cells that have been damaged and stiffened by this sugar coating.
So if my HbA1c is 7%, it means 7% of my red blood cells are stiff and sugar-coated.
Correct.
But why does it take 3 months for that number to drop, even if I haven't eaten a grain of sugar in 30 days? My fasting glucose is perfect on day 30. Why isn't my HbA1c perfect?
Because of the biological lifespan of a red blood cell. A human red blood cell lives for approximately 90 to 120 days before the spleen destroys it and the body recycles the parts.
So they stick around.
They do. Even if you have perfect flatline blood sugar for 30 consecutive days, you still have millions of old, stiff, sugar-coated red blood cells circulating in your system that were created 2 or 3 months ago when you were still eating sugar.
Wow, okay.
It takes a full 3 to 4 months for your body to completely undergo cellular turnover, to destroy all the old, damaged cells and replace them with new, flexible, clean red blood cells that were generated in your new, low-sugar environment.
So the 1-month mark proves your internal environment is fixed, but you have to wait 3 months to get the ultimate clinical trophy, the perfect A1C score, simply because you have to wait for the old damaged cells to naturally die off. The biology makes perfect, undeniable sense.
It does. It is a timeline of guaranteed healing. And, beyond the hard clinical metrics, there is a profound psychological shift that occurs by the end of this 30-day period that I think is the most rewarding part of the entire experiment.
Yes, the psychological permanence. The research brings up a scenario that I think is the perfect capstone everything we've discussed today. Imagine it is day 31.
The finish line.
The formal 30-day challenge is technically over. You've done it. Your family member, the control subject who has been eating exactly the same way they always have, riding the dopamine spikes and insulin crashes, they offer you a sugary treat.
A test.
A donut, a piece of cake, a sweetened coffee, and the incredible, almost unbelievable thing is you will naturally, effortlessly refuse it. You are not relying on willpower. You're not gripping the edge of the counter, sweating, whispering, I must resist the donut.
Not at all. Because willpower requires fighting against your own biology. Willpower is attempting to ignore a starving brain and screaming dopamine receptors. But on day 31, your biology is entirely on your side.
Your brain and your stomach are so incredibly satisfied with this new, stable, high-energy life that the desire for the sugar is genuinely eradicated.
It's just gone.
The dopamine receptors have upregulated and taken off the dark sunglasses. They are sensitive to normal, everyday joys again.
The gut microbiome is balanced, so you don't have yeast colonies chemically demanding sugar.
The hunger hormones are whispering gentle cues instead of screaming false starvation signals.
Exactly.
The physical thought of eating that heavy, artificially sweet pastry and throwing a chaotic wrench into this beautifully humming, perfectly calibrated metabolic machine is actually unappealing. You have achieved true metabolic freedom.
It is the ultimate victory of the experiment. The control subject remains trapped on the roller coaster, but the variable, your physiology, has been entirely and permanently transformed from the cellular level upward.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have mapped the entire journey. We've traced the path from the miserable, irritable dopamine crash of day 1 through the sluggish, friction-filled metabolic shift of days 2 and 3 as you transition from sugar to fat fuel.
The hardest part.
We've explored the glorious equilibrium of the first week where the systemic inflammatory fire cools and the brain fog completely lifts. We've mapped the hormonal reset of week 2 where insulin sensitivity returns and hunger finds its hygiene.
We've walked the bacterial battlefield in the gut during week 3 as the toxic visceral fat dissolves from your organs.
And we've reviewed the undeniable objective clinical lab results of week 4, from dropping blood pressure to reversing fatty liver and plummeting triglycerides. It is a massive, multi-system healing process, all driven by your body's own innate, desperate desire to be healthy. All you did was remove one single disruptive molecule.
And that is the most powerful physiological takeaway. The human body desperately wants to heal. It wants to operate in a state of vibrant, energetic homeostasis.
It's built for it.
The only thing preventing it from doing so is the constant daily influx of toxic free sugar. By removing it, you simply get out of the body's way and allow the microscopic machinery to do what it had evolved over millions of years to do best.
Right.
If we connect this specific 30-day timeline to the bigger picture of our lives, it forces a profound, almost uncomfortable realization about human potential.
What is that realization?
If completely removing just one highly processed ingredient can fundamentally rewire your brain's dopamine reward circuitry, completely alter the microscopic bacterial ecosystem in your gut, and literally reverse chronic organ damage in a mere 720 hours, what other normal daily habits are masking your body's true physical and mental potential?
Wow. What an incredible question to leave on. 720 hours to meet a completely optimized, entirely new version of yourself.
It's an opportunity.
A massive thank you to the clinical insights that helped us map out the parameters of this incredible deep dive. The control subject is already living in your house. The laboratory is open. The experiment is waiting for you. We strongly encourage you to take the challenge, cut the free sugar, and discover exactly what your biological baseline is supposed to feel like. Until next time, keep questioning the variables in your life, and we will see you on the next deep dive.